Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're diving into something, well, pretty fundamental.
Yeah, something that touches everyone's life and likely challenges a belief you hold.
We're talking about age and, your metabolism. There's this widely held idea that as soon as you hit a certain age, maybe your late 20s or 30s, your metabolism just slams on the brakes.
It's the go-to excuse for weight creep, isn't it? Oh, it's just my metabolism.
Right, I'm getting older.
Slowing down.
Totally. But our source material for this deep dive, a really interesting collection of recent research and studies, it kind of pushes back on that common narrative in a big way. Our mission here is to dig into what the latest science actually says, cut through the myths, and, pull out the most important takeaways for you.
Exactly. We want to show you how your metabolism really works as the years go by, and maybe more importantly, highlight just how much control you actually have over it.
And the most surprising part from these sources, your metabolism might not be the rapidly declining villain you've been told it is. The research suggests it stays surprisingly stable for much longer than people think.
Which means maybe the weight changes people often associate with age are actually driven more by shifts in lifestyle.
You mean like stress, sleep?
Yeah, stress, sleep, activity levels.
Yeah.
Rather than just the number of candles on your birthday cake.
Fascinating. So let's jump into this deep dive. First, just to make sure we're on the same page, what is metabolism like at its core?
Well, think of it like your body's personal energy factory, or maybe its internal kitchen, your internal Uber Eats, maybe. It's the complex set of processes that that turn the food you eat into the energy your body needs to do everything.
And that's not just energy for running a marathon, right? It's energy for...
It's blinking, breathing, thinking, everything. A huge part of that is your basal metabolic rate, or BMR.
BMR, okay.
This is the energy your body burns just to keep the lights on when you're totally at rest. Our source uses the analogy of a car idling. It still burns gas even when it's not moving, right?
Makes sense.
The research mentioned suggests, the average person, they burn around 1,800 calories a day.
Wow, 1,800.
Yeah, and that's just, keeping the basic functions going, just maintaining.
1,800 calories just for staying alive? That's a lot of background work.
It really is. It's about breaking down food, absorbing nutrients, building and repairing tissues, all of it. So that resting rate, that's the fundamental engine speed.
That's okay. And the big myth is that this fundamental engine speed just drops dramatically early in life.
Right. The conventional wisdom is that your metabolism starts slowing down significantly somewhere in your late 20s or 30s. But this is where the source material provides that surprising twist.
Yeah.
A major study looking at 6,500 people revealed that, contrary to popular belief.
6,500 people? Wow.
Yeah, a big one. It showed your metabolism stays largely stable and doesn't really start a significant decline until around age 60.
60. That completely changes the picture.
Yeah.
When you hear that number, doesn't it make you question everything you thought you knew about those tighter pants after 30?
It absolutely does. The core finding is that the body's basic calorie burning engine doesn't slow down nearly as early as most people assume.
Okay, that's surprising. So if the main engine isn't slowing until 60, why does it feel like things are changing, in our 30s, 40s, 50s? What's actually going on there?
This is where the source material helps connect the dots, because there are factors that change earlier in life, and they absolutely do impact your overall daily calorie burn, even if the BMR isn't plummeting yet.
Okay.
The biggest one, muscle mass.
Muscle mass. Okay, tell me more about that. Why does that matter so much?
The source describes muscles as tiny furnaces, and it's a perfect way to think about it. Muscle tissue is metabolically active. It burns calories even when you're just sitting around.
Right.
The research points out that a pound of muscle burns roughly 6 calories a day at rest.
Okay.
Compared to only about 2 calories for a pound of fat.
So more muscle equals more effortless calorie burning.
Got it. And our sources say we start losing muscle earlier than 60. Yes, this process is called sarcopenia, and the research indicates it can begin subtly as early as your 30s.
In your 30s. Already.
Yeah. Inactive adults, for instance, can lose between 3 to 5% of their muscle mass each decade. The material cites studies showing that by age 60, scans can reveal a noticeable decrease, around 14% less leg muscle compared to younger years.
14%. Wow.
And plus, even if you're active, there's an increase in fat within the muscle tissue itself over time. Intramuscular fat.
Okay. So even if the resting metabolic rate per pound of tissue stays stable, losing those metabolically active tissues, the muscles, means your total calorie burn at rest gradually decreases over time, starting well before 60.
Precisely.
That makes sense for why it feels like metabolism is slowing down.
Exactly. Your engine might be efficient, but if you're gradually removing some of the cylinders, well, the total output goes down.
Right.
Another smaller factor mentioned in the source is the thermic effect of food, or TEF.
That's the energy used just to digest your meal, right?
Yeah, right. It's a small percentage of your total daily burn, maybe 5–10%. And the research suggests that the efficiency of this process, it's slightly reduced in older adults.
So you burn a tiny bit less energy digesting the same meal as you age.
Kind of, yeah. A tiny bit less.
Okay, so the perception of slowing metabolism is likely driven by the combination of gradual muscle loss and maybe a less efficient TIA, both of which can start earlier than that big BMR shift at 60.
Mm-hmm.
But the sources also talk about powerful influences on metabolism that aren't just about age itself.
Right.
Things that become even more critical as we get older.
Absolutely. And these are the factors you have significant control over. Physical activity is paramount.
Yeah.
The research strongly suggests that staying active keeps your body's energy systems running more efficiently, keeps that engine tuned up.
And this isn't just hitting the gym hard, is it? The sources highlight something called NEAT.
Yes. NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Love this one.
Tell me about it.
It's all the spontaneous movement throughout your day, like fidgeting, standing instead of sitting, taking the stairs, pacing while you're on the phone.
Just moving around more.
Exactly. The material points out that these small bursts of activity can really add up, potentially burning an extra 100–200 calories daily just by being less sedentary.
That's a really empowering takeaway. Just fidget more.
It is. Even a moderate 30-minute walk burns around 150 calories, according to the research. So the recommendation often cited is aiming for 30 minutes of activity 5 times a week as a baseline.
Okay.
And inactivity has the opposite effect. The body becomes energy efficient in a way that's, well, not beneficial for weight management.
Right. You want it burning, not saving.
Exactly. Sedentary habits mean you burn significantly fewer calories throughout the day compared to an active person. And the sources indicate that older adults tend to burn about 17% fewer calories through daily activity than younger adults.
17% fewer.
Yeah. And that daily difference, even if it's only 100–200 calories, can contribute to noticeable weight gain over a year. Like potentially 20 pounds worth, the sources suggest, if you don't adjust anything else.
Wow. Okay. So activity isn't just about the workout. It's about your overall movement throughout the day. And that difference really compounds as we age.
Yeah.
What about biological differences like gender? Does that play a role?
The sources note that gender plays a role, yeah. Largely due to average differences in body composition. Men typically burn maybe 100–300 more calories per day than women.
Okay. Why is that?
Primarily because they tend to have more muscle mass, partly influenced by testosterone.
Ah, so a bit of a built-in advantage for men in the calorie burning department.
To some extent, yes. But the sources also specifically address challenges women face, particularly related to menopause.
I like menopause.
The drop in estrogen can lead to a redistribution of fat, often increasing something called visceral fat around the waistline, and it can coincide with a slower rate of calorie burn for some women.
Visceral fat. What exactly is that, and why is the source highlighting it specifically?
Good question. Visceral fat is the fat stored deep within your abdominal cavity, like around your organs. It's different from the subcutaneous fat just under your skin, the stuff you can pinch.
Okay.
And the research emphasizes it because it's metabolically more active, but in a harmful way. It's linked to higher risks of conditions like heart disease and type 2 diabetes.
Gotcha. So it's not just about aesthetics.
Not at all. And the sources note that post-menopause, women can see a significant increase in this type of fat, sometimes tripling, which contributes to increased health risks independent of overall weight gain.
That clarifies why that specific type of fat is so important to mention. Okay, so gender and activity are huge factors. What role does genetics play in all this? Is it all predetermined?
Genetics definitely loads the dice, as the source puts it.
Loads the dice. I like that.
Yeah. The research points to genes like the FTO variant. Some studies suggest this variant can influence how your body stores fat, potentially leading to storing an extra 160 or more calories daily as fat compared to those without the variant.
So some people might just be wired to store fat more easily.
That's one way to look at it. But here's the crucial point the sources emphasize, and it's really empowering. DNA isn't destiny.
Okay, good.
Your lifestyle, particularly things like strength training, which build muscle, can actually counteract or kind of override the effects of genes that might otherwise lead to a slower metabolism or easier weight gain. You can influence how those genes express themselves.
That's a really powerful message. You're not just stuck with your genes.
Not at all.
So bringing it back to age milestones, The sources do identify certain phases where changes become more apparent, even if the big BMR drop is way later, at 60. What do they say about the different decades, like the 30s?
Right. So while the core engine is steady, other things are indeed shifting. The sources note that the 30s are often when that gradual muscle loss, sarcopenia, begins.
Okay, starting in the 30s.
Yeah. This subtle shift may be combined with potentially less overall activity compared to younger years, can contribute to a slow but steady weight gain, perhaps half a pound to a pound a year, something like 0.3 to 0.5 kilograms annually, which can become noticeable by the 40s.
Right, it creeps up.
Exactly. And the body also starts to subtly favor storing fat over maintaining muscle around this time. Little shift in priorities.
And the 40s and beyond. What happens then?
That's when sarcopenia can accelerate for many people, especially if they aren't actively working to maintain muscle through strength training.
So it speeds up if you're not careful.
Yeah. And for women, as we discussed, the hormonal shifts of menopause, typically in the 40s or 50s, significantly increase the risk of gaining that unhealthy visceral fat around the abdomen, that tripling effect we mentioned.
Okay, so muscle loss and fat redistribution are kind of progressive issues from the 30s onward. But the actual slowdown in the resting metabolic rate itself, the one highlighted in that big study, that happens later.
Yes, that's specifically linked to the period after age 60. The research shows a drop of about 0.7% per year from that point on.
0.7% per year. How much is that, really?
Well, the source puts that in perspective. That rate of slowdown is roughly equivalent to needing about 100 fewer calories per day each year if you want to maintain your weight. Kind of like removing a small handful of M&Ms from your daily intake each year.
Okay, so it's gradual, but it adds up after 60.
It does. And the material also highlights that adults over 60 generally need about 20% fewer total calories per day than they did in their younger years.
20% fewer calories.
Yeah, but here's the catch. They still need the same amount of nutrients. Vitamins, minerals, protein.
So every bite counts more. You need nutrient density.
Exactly. Every bite has to work harder for you nutritionally.
So the key takeaway here seems to be that the dramatic slowdown isn't in your 30s like everyone thinks, but muscle loss and other factors are changing earlier, which affects your total daily calorie burn. And the significant resting rate drop is later, post-60.
You got it.
This all points towards taking action.
Yeah.
Right? Which the sources heavily emphasize.
Absolutely. That research mentioned particularly from Ohio State is really clear. About 80% of factors influencing weight are controllable.
80%. That's huge. That gives you a lot of power.
A lot of power.
So what kind of actions does the source material point to? What can people actually do?
Well, the big ones are strength training and aerobic exercise.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about muscle as tiny furnaces. Strength training is how you build and maintain those furnaces.
Right, build the furnaces.
Yeah. The research says adding just 2 pounds of muscle mass can help you burn an extra 50 calories a day at rest, just sitting there.
That adds up.
It does. And consistent aerobic activity, walking, running, swimming, whatever you like, that keeps your metabolism functioning optimally throughout the day, keeps everything humming along.
And diet and hydration has specific roles too. It's not just exercise.
Definitely. There are some interesting points there. The source mentions getting enough protein, especially at breakfast. Apparently, it can have a higher thermic effect.
Meaning you burn more calories digesting it.
Exactly. About 35% higher compared to eating that same protein later in the day, according to one study mentioned.
Huh. That's a simple habit shift that could make a difference. Protein at breakfast?
It's worth trying, and simple hydration is surprisingly powerful. Drinking just 16 ounces of water, like a regular water bottle, can temporarily spike your metabolism by about 30% for up to an hour.
30% just from water.
For about an hour, yeah. Pretty significant boost. Green tea is also mentioned as potentially boosting metabolism by maybe 4 or 5%. Smaller, but still something.
Interesting little tweaks.
Mm-hmm. And the sources also include a practical note. If you experience persistent fatigue or unexplained weight changes, it's always worth talking to your doctor.
Good point.
Because conditions like hypothyroidism, which affects about 5% of adults over 60, can impact metabolism but are often very treatable.
That's a really good reminder to check in with a professional if something feels consistently off. Don't just blame getting older.
Right.
So pulling all this together from the sources, the core message really flips that common script about aging and metabolism, doesn't it?
It fundamentally changes it. Your metabolism isn't some ticking time bomb set to explode in your 30s. It's a complex system that adapts over time.
Adapts. I like that word.
Yeah, and the core resting rate stays relatively stable for much longer than people believe. And you have significant influence over many of the factors that impact your daily energy expenditure. It's not just happening to you.
The source is framing that your metabolism isn't broken, it's adapting. That feels much more empowering, much less fatalistic.
It is. Changes happen, muscle mass declines if you don't work to keep it. Digestion efficiency shifts slightly. The core rate eventually drops after 60. But the narrative of an early, unavoidable metabolic crash, that seems to be a myth based on this research. And the adaptation is something you can actively work with.
Which brings us to the source's powerful final thought. Aging is mandatory, but metabolic meltdown is optional.
That really encapsulates the message, doesn't it?
It really does. So, thinking about everything we've learned in this deep dive, the research showing the core metabolic rate is stable until 60. The huge power of controllable factors like muscle and activity, this idea that your body adapts rather than just declines. What does this fundamentally change about how you think about inevitable age-related weight gain or health changes? And, maybe more importantly, how does it highlight the significant power you actually have over your own health trajectory as the years go by? That's definitely something to really consider.